Hi everybody. We went over the basics of how landlords think in the last video, but how you deal with your landlord will depend a lot on what kind of landlord your landlord is. There are accidental landlords, reluctant landlords, one-house landlords, part-time landlords, full-time landlords, and corporate landlords. Accidental landlords are the most likely landlords to sell to you. These folks didn't intend to be landlords. They may have just inherited the house or condo. Many of these people will put their inherited properties up for sale as soon as they take ownership. If your current landlord dies, let the executor of the estate know if you're interested in buying it from whoever inherits the place. And you may be able to get a good price from the new accidental landlord. The new owner may look at the inheritance as a windfall, and they may not feel like they have to squeeze every nickel out of the place. Other people who inherit rental homes like the idea of being landlords, and so they keep the house as a rental for a while, but many will soon find out they don't really like being landlords after all. They may decide within a few years of becoming landlords that they want to cash out and get that one big check rather than little checks every month. So they decide to sell the house. If your landlord inherited the home within the last few years, there's a decent chance they'll be interested in selling it to you now. Reluctant landlords are people who bought their homes to live in at the top of the market in 2004, 5, 6, 7, or 8. Then they changed jobs or for some other reason moved out of the house and found out home prices had tanked and they couldn't sell their house without losing money. So then they decided to just rent out that damn home until prices increased enough that they could sell them without losing money. Nevada, Arizona, Florida, and California all had really big real estate bubbles, and in many cities, home values are still below where they were at the peak of the bubble 10 years ago. Same for Metro Chicago, New York, Detroit, and a lot of other places. As home prices have been rising for the last several years, some of these reluctant landlords have been selling their rental properties. As home prices continue to increase, more reluctant landlords will become willing to sell. Of course, there's no guarantee they'll want to sell, but reluctant landlords who are now near or above break even are some of the most likely landlords to be willing to play ball with you and sell their rental homes to you. If this is your landlord, there's a good chance they'll be interested in selling it to you if they can sell it to you without losing money. A more fortunate group of bubble city landlords are those who can sell and make a little money now, but they don't want to sell because the house is still worth less than what they paid for it in 2004, 5, 6, 7, or 8. If any of these reluctant landlords can sell to you without paying a 4, 5, or 6% real estate agent commission, your landlord can probably afford to sell it to you before they can afford to sell it to anyone else on the planet. That's a huge advantage for you. Selling to you might very well be your landlord's best option. Whether they're financially underwater, barely above water, or simply not back to what they paid, many landlords who bought at or near the top of the real estate bubble want to sell, but they're just waiting until they can sell the place and break even. However, they personally define break even. Another big group of landlords are one-house landlords. They're different from accidental landlords and reluctant landlords because they became landlords on purpose. Perhaps they bought the house specifically to be a rental. Or perhaps they used to live in the house, but when they bought another home, they decided to instead keep this one as a rental. They wanted to see what it was like to be a landlord. One-house landlords are more likely to sell to you than larger landlords. Perhaps they tried being landlords and they found out they don't really like the hassle and they don't really make that much money anyway. Or perhaps they've owned the house for a long time, it's appreciated a ton, and they're considering cashing out now and calling it a day. For whatever reason, they may be open to selling the house. On the other hand, they may have found out they love being landlords and they think this home will be the first in their future rental empire. If that's the case for your landlord, you're probably out of luck on buying the place. Here's another scenario with Onehouse Landlords. If your landlords used to live in the house until they turned it into a rental, and it's been a rental for less than 3 years, then there are potentially huge tax savings for your landlords if they sell it before it's been a rental for 3 years. That's assuming the home has appreciated a lot since they originally bought it. This is a niche case for sure, but if that's your landlord situation, you can make an extremely strong argument that your landlord should sell the place to you before they lose the federal tax break on the amount the house has appreciated. Part-time landlords have more than one rental, and rentals are an important source of income for them. The rentals, however, don't make enough money to be a full-time income. Nevertheless, these part-time landlords are often grizzled old pros. They may be willing to sell to you if they want to cash out or downsize, or if your particular rental house doesn't make them a lot of money. Or if they think home prices or rents won't increase as much in the future. If they thought home prices or rents might actually fall in the future, they'd be very willing to sell to you now. Full-time landlords are real pros, and they're really only in it for the money. They're jaded because they've had to deal with crazy, destructive tenants for years and years. They may be willing to sell the house to you, but like part-time landlords, only if selling it to you meets their financial goals. Their financial goals might be the house has appreciated a lot in value and they want to cash out and invest the money somewhere else. The house isn't making a lot of money. Home prices aren't increasing fast anymore in your area, or your landlord is worried they won't. Rents are not rising fast anymore in your area, or your landlord is worried they won't. If they'll consider selling the house to you, remember, they're only in it for the money, so don't let yourself be taken advantage of. Be careful of landlords of all sizes who string you along, but who only are willing to sell to you if you pay them a crazy high price. Corporate landlords can own thousands of homes. They're huge businesses. A few corporate landlords give their tenants first shot at buying the homes the corporation wants to sell. If that's your landlord, that could work out very well for you. In one case I read about, one of the largest landlords in the country, Invitation Homes, gave a tenant $5,000 to cover closing costs when the tenant bought the $150,000 home. That was about a 3% contribution the landlord made towards the tenant's closing costs. That was a nice deal for the former renter, assuming, of course, that the $150,000 price was a fair market value price for the house. For corporate landlords, the big advantage to selling to tenants like you is that they get the retail price for the homes instead of the wholesale price. Traditionally, corporate landlords have often sold homes in groups as package deals to other investors, but they'd only get the wholesale price for the homes in the package, not the retail price. Like all landlords, corporate landlords also save money by not having to rehab the place before selling it, and there's no potential vacancy cost when they sell to tenants like you. Corporate landlords, of course, have their rigid corporate bureaucratic policies. If they're willing to sell to you, you'll pretty much have to do things their way. Nevertheless, you should still pay for your own independent professional advice, like hiring a home inspector and a real estate agent or a real estate attorney to review the contract with your corporate landlord before you sign the documents. Okay, we got a feel for the different motivations of the different types of landlords. Accidental landlords, reluctant landlords, one-house landlords, part-time landlords, full-time landlords, and corporate landlords. Now, before you pitch your landlord with the idea of selling to you, you should check out the ownership history of the property. In most states, you can learn a lot online about the house and your landlord's ownership of the house.